My sister broke my prosthetic legs, and my father laughed because it is not a real leg. They went completely silent when I made them pay. The reason I have a prosthetic leg is my sister. Years ago, she was driving too fast with her phone in her hand, and she put the car into a pole on my side. She walked away without a scratch. I woke up in a hospital without my leg below the knee. She never said sorry for that, not once, not in all the years since. When I came home learning to walk again, she complained that everyone was always fussing over me now and asked when things would go back to normal. Our parents called it a terrible accident, told me not to hold it over her, and that was the end of it for everyone except me. So Claudia has broken two of my legs, the real one and the plastic one, and paid for neither, because she is the favorite and nothing sticks to her. When she broke the second one, I already knew exactly how it would go, and for a while I was right. She came to stay at our parents' place and took over the room I use when I visit. My leg was on its stand by the bed. She said later it was in the way. She grabbed it and threw it, and the socket cracked. The part molded to what is left of my leg, the part you cannot just glue. I could not wear it. When I told her she broke it, she said, "Relax. It is not even a real leg." I said I cannot walk without that. She said, "So hop, it is not far." And she thought that was funny. Leaf was in the doorway and he laughed, an actual laugh, and told me not to make a scene. Emmy looked at the crack and said, "It was an accident. Just buy another one. Just buy another one. It is thousands of dollars, weeks of fittings, a new mold taken off a limb that changes shape." I told her that. She said, "You would think you'd be used to buying legs by now." I asked Claudia to pay for it. She laughed. "With what? Use your insurance, that is what it is for." I said insurance does not cover a leg somebody breaks on purpose. She said, "You always make everything about your leg." I picked the pieces off the floor while she watched, and she said, "God, you are so dramatic about a piece of plastic." I asked if she understood I would be on crutches for weeks. She said, "It is not like it grows back, so what does it matter?" She said my old prosthetic was ugly anyway, and a new one might look better, like she had done me a favor. She stepped over the crutches I had leaned by the couch and asked me to keep those out of the walkway. When I said the crutches made the stove hard to reach, she said I was milking it and it was embarrassing. Then she went around the family telling everyone I was making a huge thing out of a little accident and guilting her over a leg. Zion, my cousin, called to tell me I was using my disability to control everyone, which was new, since the only reason any of this was happening was that she broke my leg. I was on crutches for a month and I missed work, because I cannot stand at my job without it, and the whole family's only worry was that I not make Claudia feel bad. She was winning the way she always wins, by taking something from me and then being the one everybody comforts. She even said to me at dinner in front of them, I said it was an accident both times. When are you going to move on? Both times. She lumped the car and the leg together like they were the same small thing I would not drop. So I filed a report for a damaged medical device and opened a claim through my prosthetist. The second I did, the family turned. How could you report your own sister over a leg? You are tearing this family apart. Claudia cried to everyone that I was trying to have her arrested over an accident, that I was cold, that I had always hated her. Emmy said, "You know she cannot afford a mark on her record. How could you do this to her?" As if the leg had thrown itself. Every single person told me to drop it, the one thing I was allowed to do, and doing it made me the villain. Emmy called me the night the claim went in, 3 hours after, and the first thing out of her mouth was not "How are you?" It was, "Your sister is in pieces. She cannot eat. She cannot sleep. You need to call them and say it was a misunderstanding." I had been on crutches for a month. I had missed 3 weeks of pay. I had picked my broken leg up off the floor while my sister called me dramatic, and the emergency was that Claudia had lost her appetite. I said no, clearly. No speech, just no. Her voice went thin. "Then you are choosing a piece of plastic over your family." I said, "It is a leg, Mom. It is my leg." She hung up. Not a slam, just an ending. Like I had said something so unreasonable there was nothing left to discuss. I sat with the phone still glowing in my hand, and I thought about how she had said piece of plastic in the exact same words Claudia used, like it had been passed between them. This idea that because my leg is not made of bone, it does not count, that breaking it is not really breaking anything. Leif did not call. He sent one line, "Handle this quietly, or do not bother coming to the house again." 12 words. I read it, and something in me went still. Not sad, not angry, just still. The way you go when someone finally says out loud the thing you always knew they were thinking. I screenshotted it. I saved it. I called Althea, my best friend, the one person who had never once told me I was overreacting, and I read her both of them word for word. She did not gasp. She said, "Save every single one. Every text, Every voicemail. They are telling you exactly who they are. So I did. Everything went into one folder. Then Claudia's message came through. Long paragraphs. Written in a soft, careful voice I barely recognized. Like she had drafted it and edited it before she sent it. She said she had been struggling with guilt for years about the accident. She said she carried it every day. She said the claim proved I had never forgiven her for something she could not undo. I read it twice, top to bottom. Not one line said she was sorry for the prosthetic. Not one sentence mentioned the leg she threw. The whole thing was about the car. The thing from years ago she also never apologized for, but was now pretending she had suffered over quietly this entire time. She had taken what she did last month and buried it under what she did years ago, and wrapped the package in sadness, so anyone reading it would see a woman in pain, instead of a woman who owed me $11,000. I did not answer it. Then Zion called and started soft, and said Claudia made a mistake. People make mistakes. I let him finish. Then I asked him one question. Which version of the mistake do you believe? The one where it fell off the table on its own? The one where I left it on the floor and she stepped on it? Or the one where it was old and just broke? He went quiet. The kind of quiet where somebody is hearing something they did not want to hear. He said I was twisting things. I said I was quoting his cousin. Those are her 3 stories. Pick one. He did not pick one. He said families should not do this to each other and hung up. Every person who called me that week called to protect her. Not one asked how I was getting to work. Not one asked if I was in pain. Not one asked what it is like to hop to the bathroom at 3 in the morning because your sister decided your leg was plastic. I kept a list in my phone that week. Not on purpose at first. Just because the numbers kept adding up and I needed somewhere to put them. 31 days without a leg. 15 shifts I could not cover and 4 more I gave away. $2,300 in lost hours. A cab to the fitting because I could not work the pedals. The stairs at my building, which I had stopped noticing years ago, which became a 15-minute problem twice a day. None of that was in any conversation my family had about me. They had one subject, and it was how Claudia was holding up. Gracie sent me a message that week that said she hoped I was doing okay, and in the same paragraph, asked whether I had considered that Claudia might be punishing herself more than any claim ever could. I did not answer it. I looked at that sentence for a long time and understood that even the kind ones in this family had been handed a script. Then the next morning, Abdul Rahman called, my prosthetist, and for the first time in days, somebody was talking about what happened instead of how everyone felt about it. He said, the socket was cracked by lateral force consistent with being thrown or slammed against a hard surface. I have documented it. This is not ambiguous. He said it flat, no drama, the way he says everything. He had put it in the official file, in language that could not be softened by Emmy, or laughed off by Leaf, or rewritten by Claudia. Lateral force, thrown, not a fall, not a step, not where. He sent me the full report that evening, and I printed it and held it and thought about how not one person in my family had asked to see it, because knowing would mean they could not pretend, and pretending was the only thing holding them together. As that, Claudia started telling people she wanted to talk it out and make peace, and Emmy pushed for a family sit-down. I agreed to go, not because I believed any of it, but because I wanted all of them in one room when the truth had nowhere to hide. I called Althea that night and told her the whole setup, and I said I did not know if I should go. She thought about it, actually thought, and said, you do not owe them a performance of forgiveness, but if you go with your eyes open. So I told her the real reason. I want every person who told me I was overreacting to hear that damage report read out loud. I want Gracie to hear what Claudia told Zion. I want Zion to hear what Claudia told Gracie. I want my parents to watch it happen and not be able to fix it. She did not call it petty. She said, then you know what you need to do. The next 2 days I got ready. Calm, no pacing. I printed a clean copy of the report, corners sharp. I organized every text into one folder. Emmy's call, Leaf's 12 words, Claudia's careful paragraphs, Zion's speech about my disability. Then I sat at the counter with a sheet of paper and wrote 3 lines. Line 1, Claudia told the claims office the leg fell off the table on its own. Line 2, Claudia told Gracie I left it on the floor and she stepped on it. Line 3, Claudia told Zion it was old and just broke. 3 stories, 3 people, 1 sister who could not hold a single lie long enough to keep it. I put the paper in the folder and the folder in my bag, and I did not rehearse anything, because I was not building a case out of feelings. I had a professional damage assessment, and I had her own words in 3 different shapes. The facts were enough. The day before the dinner, Claudia called, and her voice was soft, almost sweet, like we were close, like none of it had happened. She said, I am going to apologize tomorrow in front of everyone. I know I was wrong. Can we start fresh? And something in my chest loosened, because you never fully stop wanting your sister to be sorry, even when you have a folder full of proof she is not capable of it. I almost said yes. Then she kept talking. And once I apologize, you can call them and drop the claim, right? Mom said if you drop it before it goes further, it will not show up anywhere. There it was, in the same breath as I know I was wrong. The deal. The apology was not the point. It was the price of admission. Say sorry at the table, get the paperwork pulled, and we all go back to the version of this family where Claudia takes and I absorb. The line about not showing up anywhere was not her language. That was Emmy, finding the angle, making sure her favorite walks away clean. My voice went flat. I said, I will see you tomorrow, Claudia, and I hung up while she was still waiting for the yes. I sat there afterward with the phone face down on the counter and did the math on how close she had come. 5 seconds. 5 seconds of her sounding like a sister, and I had almost put the folder down. Almost called the office in the morning. Almost handed her the clean record and gone back to being the one who absorbs things. That is how many years of practice she has. She knows which voice loosens something in me and exactly how long to hold it before the ask arrives. But the ask always arrives. It arrived when we were kids, and it arrived after the accident, and it arrived last night, and this was the first time in my life I heard it coming. I zipped the bag and set it by the door where I would grab it on the way out. That night, Althea texted at 11. Whatever happens tomorrow, remember, you are not the one who broke anything. You are not the one who lied. You are not the one who laughed. I read it 3 times and slept better than I had in weeks. Emmy opened the door before I knocked. She looked at my crutches, at the pinned-up pant leg, and something moved across her face that in another mother might have been guilt. And then it passed. She leaned in close and whispered, please just let her say what she needs to say, and then we can all move forward. That was her greeting. Stage directions. I said, I am here to listen, Mom, and watched relief wash over her, because she thought listening meant folding. Inside, the table was set for 6. Cloth napkins, candles, the nice plates she only brings out when she wants an evening to feel important. Leaf did not get up from his chair. He said, glad you came to your senses. Gracie, my aunt, was already seated with a glass of water and a careful smile, the kind you give when you have not picked a side yet. Zion stood by the hallway with his arms crossed, looking at his phone. Gracie, who got the version where I left it on the floor. Zion, who got the version where it broke on its own. 10 feet apart, each holding a different lie, neither of them knowing the other one had a different one. Claudia came in last, because Claudia has always known how to make an entrance. Hair done, soft blue top, eyes just pink enough to look like she had been up all night and not one shade past it. She sat across from me and put her hands flat on the table, palms down, steadying herself, and said, before we eat, I want to say something. Emmy came in and sat beside her and squeezed her hand. Squeezed it, like Claudia was the one who needed holding, like the person across the table on crutches was not in the frame. Claudia took a breath and said, I know I was careless with your leg and I am sorry. It was an accident, but I should have handled it better and I feel terrible. Leaf nodded slowly, like she had done something brave. Emmy dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Gracie reached over and patted her arm and said, that took courage, sweetie. Zion uncrossed his arms and looked at me, and his face said the rest. Ball is in your court. She did her part. And then every set of eyes in that room turned to me, waiting for me to accept the gift and close the book so we could eat. I let it sit. 1 second, 2, 3. Then I said, thank you for saying that, Claudia. Her shoulders dropped. Emmy exhaled. The whole room loosened like a fist unclenching. 3 more seconds. Then I said, now I want to read something. I unzipped my bag and set the report on the table. Emmy's face tightened. What is that? I said. The damage assessment from my prosthetist. I think everyone should hear what actually happened to my leg before we move forward. Her own word, handed back to her with something attached she did not want. Claudia's face changed, the softness dropping off like a mask off a hook, and underneath was the sister who threw my leg and told me to hop. She said, what are you doing? I said, exactly what you asked. I am moving on with the truth. Then I read it out loud. The socket was cracked by lateral force consistent with being thrown or slammed against a hard surface, not consistent with a fall, a step, or age-related wear. Claudia said, that is one person's opinion. I said, that is the licensed professional who built the leg. Gracie's head came up. She turned to Claudia and said, wait, you told me she left it on the floor and you stepped on it. That is not what you just said. Claudia froze. Zion said, she told me it was old and just broke on its own. Claudia looked between them and said, you are all ganging up on me. This is exactly what she wanted, and pointed at me. Leaf said, this is a family dinner, not a courtroom. Put that paper away. I said, Dad, you laughed when she broke it. You told me not to make a scene. I am not making a scene. I am reading a report. He said I was embarrassing myself. I said, no, I am embarrassing you. There is a difference. Claudia started crying for real then, messy and loud, and Emmy put an arm around her and said, see what you have done? She apologized. Why can you not accept kept it, and I felt the room start to tilt back toward her the way it always does. But Gracie was reading the report line by line, her finger tracing the words, her mouth set in a thin line I had never seen on her before. Then she set it down flat and said, "You lied to me. You looked me in the eye and said that." Claudia opened her mouth and Gracie held up a hand. "Do not. I read it. A fall does not crack a socket like that." Then she turned her whole body toward my parents and said, "And you two knew she threw it. You were there. You told me it was an accident." Emmy's lips parted and Gracie said, "I am not finished." And my mother closed her mouth. I had never seen anyone do that to Emmy in my life. Then Zion stood up and he looked sick. He said to me, "I told you that you were using your disability to control everyone. Claudia told me you left it on the floor and were blaming her." He swallowed. Then he turned to her. "You fed me a story, and I repeated it like it was true." She said, "I did not make you do anything." He said, "You made sure I did not have the real version. That is worse." And I watched that land on her like a door closing. The room did not get loud after that. It got quiet in a way that house had never been quiet, and the quiet did the work. Gracie pulled the report closer and read it a second time, all the way through, and I watched her get to the last line and stop. Zion sat back down without meaning to, like his legs decided for him. Emmy kept glancing at the paper in these fast little looks, wanting to read it and not wanting anyone to catch her reading it, because reading it would mean admitting what it said, that her daughter threw her other daughter's leg into a wall, that it was not an accident, that it had never been an accident, either time. Leif had told me to put the paper away, and I had not, and he did not have a second thing to try. He had spent my whole life ending conversations with one sentence, and there was no sentence for this. Claudia looked at Gracie, arms crossed now, at Zion, sitting with his jaw working, at Emmy, whose arm was draped over her shoulder out of habit and nothing else, at Leif, gripping his chair, and I saw the exact second she understood that nobody was coming. The tears stopped like a faucet shutting off. Her face went dry and hard, and she turned to my parents and said, "This is your fault, both of you. You never made me deal with anything. The car, you told everyone it was bad luck. You paid my insurance so my rates would not go up. You never once made me sit with what I did to her leg, the real one, the one I took." She paused, and the room was so still I could hear the wax move in the candles. Then she said, "So yes, I threw the fake one, because you taught me it did not matter." Emmy's hand dropped off her shoulder and landed in her own lap, and she stared at it. Leif stared at the table, at the wood grain and the napkins, because there was nowhere else to look. I thought about the day I came home from the hospital, how my mother patted my hand once and said we would get through this as a family, and then went and sat with Claudia for 40 minutes because Claudia felt guilty. 40 minutes with the one who could still walk. One pat for the one who could not. Emmy whispered, "That is not fair." Claudia made a short, ugly sound that was not a laugh and said, "None of this is fair. Ask her." I put my hands on my crutches and stood up, and it is not a fast thing, standing up on crutches with one leg. You get your balance, your grip, your weight centered. The whole table watched me do it. I picked up the report, folded it along the crease I had made that morning, and put it back in my bag. Then I said, "I am not dropping the claim. Claudia owes me a leg." I looked at my parents. "And you owe me something you will never pay, because I spent years thinking I was the problem, and it turns out you just did not want to deal with the one who was." Emmy's face came apart. Leif did not look up. Neither of them said stop. Neither of them said stay. I turned to Claudia, who was sitting exactly as she had started, hands flat, and I said, "You finally told the truth. First time for everything." She did not answer. There was nothing behind her eyes calculating a next move, for once. I went out through the hallway past the family photos and down the porch steps one at a time, the same way I had come up. The door closed behind me. Nobody opened it. Althea's car was at the curb. She had come without being asked, because that is who she is. I put my crutches in the back and got in and set the bag on my lap, and she did not start the engine right away. She said, "How do you feel?" The porch light stayed on behind us the whole way down the street. Nobody stood in the window. My empty pant leg lay flat against the seat.